Frankensteam, written and told by Kiefer Adams. Ever since Oliver and Toad had been saved from scrap by Douglas, the Great Western Auto Tank had enjoyed his new life on the island of Sodor. But there were times when the thought of scrap would make Oliver shiver in the smoke box. Duck and Toad would be one of a few to keep him company and remind him that now that he was on the Fat Controller's railway, he didn't have anything to worry about. Seeing a scrapyard often made Oliver a little jumpy too. But of course, like many engines, Oliver was mostly afraid of going to the smelters. One summer's evening, Oliver was shunting trucks in the yards near Tidmouth Sheds. He was just marshalling the last of the trucks into place when the Fat Controller arrived. "Good evening, Oliver," he said. "I have a job for you. Edward was supposed to collect some bridge sections for Thomas's branch line at the smelters, but unfortunately he broke down on his way over. Could I ask you to collect them for me instead?" "Yes, sir," said Oliver nervously. "Wonderful. Thank you, Oliver," said the Fat Controller. He turned and walked away. Oliver gulped. "Well, it had to happen sooner or later," he said quietly. "Me going to the smelters. I suppose we better get it over with." Oliver finished his shunting and set off for the smelters, wishing that Toad was coming with him. But unfortunately, Douglas had borrowed him to be his brake van on the Little Western. It was dark by the time Oliver reached the smelters. The red glow of the smelting shed made him very uncomfortable almost at once. Bracing himself for what would be found inside, Oliver puffed into the smelting shed. "Hello?" he called. At first, no one replied, until... boom! Arry and Bert, the scrap diesels, leapt out of the darkness, startling Oliver. "Well, well, well, Arry," scowled Bert. "Look who it is! It's the Little Western Wonder!" "I thought it would be a matter of time before you arrived," Arry scowled. "This'll be more delightful than the fate of Frankensteam." "Frankensteam?" asked Oliver. "Who on earth is that?" "Oh, this is a great tale," chuckled Bert. "Before Arry and I came here, we knew an engine on the other railway. We nicknamed him Frankensteam. He was a sorry, sad sight," added Arry. "He was an engine built entirely out of scrap, mostly a vintage tender and looking more like a vertical boiler." "He ran on for 50 years, Bert continued, "and then, when his usefulness had outlasted him, he was made into scrap all over again." Oliver was petrified. "I don't want to hear another word of this," he cried. He darted out of the smelting shed as fast as he could. The cold laughter of Arry and Bert seemed to follow him as he did. Oliver was lucky to find the bridge sections for Thomas's branch line, but he was rather shaken up. "I can see why no one likes those diesels," he shuddered. But then Oliver noticed something that gave him an idea. In the corner of the scrapyard, tilted to its side, was an old tender, and next to it was an old stovepipe chimney. This gave Oliver an idea. "Driver," he asked, "how long until we're due to leave?" "I'd say half an hour's tops," replied the driver. "Why?" Oliver quickly explained his plan. Before long, some workmen were called over, and Oliver explained what he wanted. He chuckled to himself as his little creation started to come to life. By this point, Arry and Bert had finished their work for the evening. They rolled into the sheds, delighted at their tauntings to Oliver. "It's a shame that Bluebell chap didn't come back," said Arry. "Make that 2 escapees that would have suffered," Bert agreed. Arry was just about to make another comment when he noticed that Bert had gone pale. "What's the matter with you?" he asked. Bert didn't reply. His mouth had gaped open. "Here, I'm talking to you," Arry snapped. Look, Arry, look," Bert stuttered when he finally found his voice. Arry slowly looked over. The two diesels could make out a square shape with a funnel on top, billowing steam in all directions. It can't be," gasped Arry. "It is," wailed Bert. It's Frankensteam. He's come back to punish us." The two diesels were so frightened that they darted out of the sheds, not once looking back. Had they done so, they would have noticed that Oliver had managed to convert the scrap he'd found into a likeness to Frankensteam. He chuckled dearly at the sight of Arry and Bert rumbling away. Before long, Oliver returned the scrap to its rightful place and collected the bridge sections. As he left the smelters, Oliver was pleased to have no more trouble. Dawn was just breaking when Oliver arrived on Thomas's branch line with the sections. Thomas, having just delivered the mail, was already there, waiting to collect them. "Good morning, Oliver," he said. "You're in a good mood." "I certainly am," replied Oliver, and he explained everything. "Good on you, Oliver," chuckled Thomas. "It's about time those diesels were taught a lesson." "Let's hope they won't cause me any more trouble," said Oliver. Thomas collected the bridge sections and headed back to his branch line. When the Fat Controller came to the smelters later that day, he was surprised to find Arry and Bert rather skittish. When they told him what had happened, the Fat Controller didn't seem to believe them. Oliver no longer has any problems going to the smelters now. Arry and Bert have wisely decided not to cause him any grief. But they both wonder one thing. If Oliver came back to the smelters any time soon, how far behind him was Frankensteam?